This is a call to order of a special meeting of the Personnel, Pension, and Insurance Committee of the MDC, Tuesday, July 2nd, 2024. Are there any public comments? First of all, I'm sorry, Mr. Secretary, do we have a quorum or not?
This is John Myrtle. We're currently one short of a quorum, as far as I can tell. Are there any commissioners that have called in on a phone number? Commissioner Stuber, are you present? Okay, we're one short as of right now.
Okay. Okay. Are there any public comments relative to agenda items? Once again, public comments relative to agenda items? Since we do not have a quorum, we will pass on item 3 and move to the fourth item on the agenda, the interview of Amazing Workplace with regards to its response to the 2024 request for information, industry information on technology for conducting an employment climate survey.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Kelly Shane, Chief Administrative Officer. I just want to introduce you to Amazing Workplace. CIO Applications Organization awarded Amazing Workplace the top HR tech solutions provider for 2024. I'm going to let Sean Holyfield, the CEO and founder, introduce his team and introduce his company. But yes, they did respond to the RFI, and you have had a chance to review their submission and the information that they had provided. But at the last meeting, you had asked for them to come in, and we've asked them to present about a 20 to 25-minute presentation on industry trends, how industry is conducting employee climate surveys, and share with you their process for conducting their software and services that they provide, and then leave an opportunity for you to ask your questions about their process and anything you would like to know about a climate survey in today's today's trends. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Sean, who I believe is on video, and allow him to start his presentation. And I believe he may be sharing his screen at some point, John, as well. Thank you. Sean?
Thank you so very much. Yes. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes. Yep.
Excellent. And thank you so much for inviting us and having us here. I'm here with Tim, who is a member of our team as well over at Amazing Workplace. And as I go through the information today, please pause me at any time to ask questions, because the purpose of this activity is really to leave all of you in a position of being well informed about these topics so that you can obviously make smart decisions about them, if that makes sense. I'm going to share my screen, but in order to do so, I'm going to need someone to give me sharing permissions.
Just sent it. You should be able to do it.
Thank you so very much. Excellent. Is everyone able to see the screen that says good morning, Sean?
Yep.
All right. Thank you so very much. Okay, so I think the first topic that we're going to talk a little bit about is sort of the development of surveys over time, or gathering information from people. So as some of you may know, surveys started back in the late 1800s, early 1920s. Those surveys over time took form in documents that you all may be familiar with, and I'm going to pull this screen up right here. And up at the top right, we see sort of an early version of what became developed in the 1950s, which is an employee attitude survey. Is everybody able to see this screen? I apologize. As I'm sharing, I can't see any of you.
I can see what you're sharing, Sean.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
So yeah, the technology has come a long way in being able to gather information meaningfully from people within an organization. And the early form of surveys was predominantly written documents that were gathered in person. Over time, a number of companies developed technology-based versions of those surveys, which looked a lot like and continue today to look a lot like the surveys that were developed back in the 1920s through the 1950s. As we come forward through time and technology has enabled organizations to connect with people in a way that gives them anonymity and confidentiality and the freedom to share how they feel without fear of repercussions happening. Technologies like the ones you see at the top right have been developed by other companies, which you may be familiar with. I'm sure many of you have heard of SurveyMonkey. You may or may not have heard of Gallup or Qualtrics. But these organizations, by and large, took the old paper surveys and digitized them. One of the things that we did here at Amazing Workplace, which was highlighted in the awards that we recently received, is we developed a conversation system. So instead of it being a traditional survey in paper form or in digital form, which oftentimes can feel a little bit like a test, it's actually designed to be more like a conversation with one of our people, where we introduce topics that are important to us as an organization. We ask some simple, typically yes/no questions, and then we wrap up each topic with finding out how people actually feel overall about a particular topic. And what we found is that the completion rates, the engagement with these conversations, the experience for individuals going through this technology-based system is far better and far more liked than the traditional paper or paper-turned digital versions of surveys, if that makes sense. The other key component part to this is the ease of understanding, and that's really a very important first step as we look at how do we want to gather meaningful information so that we can really drive participation, encourage people to finish the conversation, encourage people to share how they feel. If we don't make the time to explain what we're talking about up front, a lot of times we've already lost our audience. So this whole system is designed based on topics that we would work together to put in the conversation that we want to send out to our people. And these are completely tailorable and customizable in terms, the topics are customizable. And by introducing these topics simply to individuals, explaining what we're about to talk about, and then following that up with questions connected to those topics, we're able to gather much better information, which then puts us in a position to then make much better decisions based on that information. So the ease of use for an individual person going through a conversation, the participation levels are much higher as a result of it being more of a conversation instead of a traditional survey, and removing useless data. And that's one of the beautiful parts of this entire system, is that by removing neutral answers or answers that in no way give us meaningful information, we're able to really gather better information in order to have a much better set of results. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay.
Chairman, Commissioner Patel.
Mr. Patel.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Patel.
Do you classify the surveys according to the people, their background, and their activities? Technical, non-technical,
Yes.
etc.
Yes. So the way that our system is designed is that we're able to work with organizations to gather all of the detailed information that we want behind the scenes. So I'm actually going to give an example of that right here. I'm going to hop into some demonstration results. So this is not an actual client of ours or a customer of ours, but it's made up information for purposes of illustration. And up here in the top left, I'm going to click on this filter and compare. And right here to the right, we'll see an example of some of the different demographic or people information we can gather behind the scenes. So we load all this into the system, meaning that we know every person that's going to receive an invitation, right? And we have all the information connected to that individual's feedback or results. But the moment the data comes into the system, the software is designed to separate the data in a way that even our own software engineers can't reconnect it. So the moment an individual completes a survey, the information comes in, it's connected to all of this information we see here, which doesn't tell us who they are specifically. It just gives us demographic background information that we can filter on and use in order to really identify things like location or department or other meaningful demographic pieces of information that are important. But it doesn't allow us to identify who the individual is. So unless someone leaves a comment and says, "Hi, I'm Sean, and I don't like the food that we have at lunch," no one's going to know it's me leaving that comment, and no one's going to know that it was my answers that were provided. Does that make sense?
Anyone have any questions?
That's good.
Bill?
What incentive do you provide to make sure everybody participates?
We have several things that we do in order to encourage participation. Probably the most important of which is just messaging and communication up front. We have worked with organizations to provide additional incentives for participation, and those are things that we can explore. But we tend to find that when we come into a group and we explain that the reason that we're doing this is to really clearly identify how things are going, how you're feeling, and what we can do to improve conditions at work or things that mean a lot to you, we tend to find that employees want to participate in this system because it is different and it is really focused on them. A lot of other software providers over the years, the traditional surveys have focused on things that don't matter as much to employees. How an individual feels at work matters a lot to them. And we tend to find very high levels of participation based on that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Beyond the conversation that we just talked about and the move towards technology, the ability to send this out in any form. It can be sent out by email, it can be downloaded to a person's phone. They can access and walk through these conversations using whatever technology they prefer, which makes it really easy for them to use. The results that come into the system are also really, really easy in that when we arrive, we instantly see overall how people feel within the organization. And then there's a verification technology. We developed a patent pending verification technology that as a person goes through a conversation and they're going through and answering questions at the tail end of the conversation, the system is smart enough to present to them how it appears that they feel based on the answers that they've given. And this is a really critically important component part of this technology, is that once we go through and answer all the questions, we've captured all that data. But separate and apart from that, the system says, based on the answers that you've provided, it sounds like you often feel whatever that feeling is, again, based on the answers they've provided. And in that moment, the individual is able to either confirm and say, yes, that is in fact how I feel, or say, no, I actually feel differently, and here's why. And what's really meaningful about that is within the results, we can very instantly see how people feel overall, but also how many people changed their feeling up or down, and we capture precisely why. Why did that feeling go up? Why did it go down? And that then breaks. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That then allows a really clear understanding of precisely how people feel across the different feelings that are available. And when I say feel, like, are they happy or not happy about meaning at work, communication? And these are just example topics on the left side that we see here, as well as a breakdown of the number of employees that actually feel that way. This all ties into our action system or our action planning system. So this actionable information, which lets us know precisely how people feel, we can then leverage to create action plans based on group, department, individual teams that then allows us to really affect the positive change that we're looking for. These results are also broken down at a individual topic level. So if we're wanting to simply just quickly get a sense of how our people feel across these topics, the platform allows us easy access and visibility to that. It also lets us filter by any individual group. So say we want to look at individuals that have been here 6 to 12 months. We can instantly see how those groups feel as contrasted with other length of employment groups. We're also able to very easily and quickly compare. So this is just a quick department comparison by default, where we can see how each department feels across these topics. And you'll see the departments listed right here along this left side, overall how they feel, how that compares to the overall feeling by the workplace, which departments are happier about a particular topic versus unhappier about a particular topic. And also we have the same filter and compare, where we can add in groups and compare across multiple groups on the same screen.
Can I ask a question here, Mr. Chairman? This
Yes.
is Commissioner.
Commissioner
Yes,
Salemi?
just a quick-
Yes, please.
Thank you. Sean, I'm sorry if you've already gone over this, but just a quick question, and after what I've seen so far is, you do know that the MDC is a public works agency, and you know, a large portion of our employees don't work with a computer on, you know, for work on a regular basis. You know, they're out in the field either driving a truck or a machine or you know, those kind of typical public work functions. So I know you said that there are various different formats that they can use to sort of go through this survey, and but I just my question was, you know, are you going to, if you were to do this, would you provide some level of training to these guys before they are expected to do the survey, so that they have some idea that how they can participate without having to sit in front of a computer, that which might be difficult for them? I'm sorry.
100%.
I asked that earlier, but I
Yeah.
kind of wanted to hear more of what you said. But go ahead, please.
And no apologies needed at all. I'm really happy you asked that question. The short answer is yes. The slightly longer answer, and I'll give an example of an organization that we worked with, which is a 600-person manufacturing facility based in Ohio. We were working with individuals, none of whom had computers, and we found ways to gather the information and provide training so that they were able to easily complete those conversations, what most people would think of as a survey, but you know, those conversations. We have a dedicated team that from day one works with your team in order to keep everyone up to date and aligned with the outcome that we're wanting to achieve. And they stay connected at no additional charge from the start all the way through the results and any action plans that are needing to be created, or follow-up conversations, presentations, and more. So that team is devoted to the success of this entire project or this entire initiative. And it starts with gathering information about what types of topics we really want to address and talk about, as well as gathering information about how best to get this information in front of these conversations, rather in front of our people. All the way through, we draft, provide emails and other means to communicate information, texts to individual participants. If we have group meetings where we want to bring an individual team together or group together and kick this off and do it live, our team members show up and present on your behalf. Much like if you were to bring in like a third-party benefits provider, a lot of times they'll send someone over to kind of walk through how to sign up for benefits. We provide that same service as part of this entire engagement, if that makes sense. Again, at no additional charge. Those team members on our side that show up and provide all of that, they also stay with you and keep everyone informed of the progress of participation, generating any ideas that may need to be generated to encourage participation. We can open and close conversation, again, traditionally what we'd call survey periods. We can extend them. There's a lot that they're available to do throughout this process. The goal obviously being as high a participation as possible.
That would be my thank you very much. That would be my my first concern. I mean, the survey and stuff. I'm sure we're capable of creating one that will, help us understand what we need to. But it's the fact that a large part of our employee base are not only they don't use computers, for their work every day or for long periods of time, but they're also on the road in a way that they're not necessarily in a location where there is some kind of device. So I'm encouraged to hear that there's no extra charge or anything, whatever, to work with the district together to try to give everybody an opportunity to first understand the survey and then secondly to actually do it or take part in it, even though they may not be at a desk for their job and using it. Thank you. You did answer that question for me. I appreciate it. So.
This is
You're very welcome.
This is Chairman Taylor. I have a question, and my question really relates to the fact that we have several bargaining units here within this institution. And I guess my question for you would be, what has been your experience in terms of doing climate surveys in institutions where there have been bargaining units? And to what extent have they been involved from the beginning or somewhere along the process in terms of one, getting their cooperation, two, providing additional support with regard to the survey being distributed among their employees, among our employees and their bargaining unit members, and more particularly getting as much participation and involvement as we can. And secondly, perhaps getting their insights with regards to the development of the instrument and the nature of the questions that we are going to be developing and distributing for this among our employees for the survey.
Sean,
Excellent.
I just wanted to let you know, Eli Justman, I'm here too as a resource from the delivery team. If you want to refer to me for anything.
Eli.
Hi,
Yeah.
Hi everybody.
So Eli is one of the members of the team that works with our customers and clients. Both of us are attorneys, not that necessarily matters in reference to what we're talking about, but just some context and background. So excellent questions. The short answer is that whatever level of participation that we want to have with that group is available. And the reason I say it that way is that we can encourage collaboration, cooperation, but only each of you as executives or leaders know what is going to work best in terms of the relationship that exists today. I'm a huge advocate and fan of working in conjunction with those groups, and we've done this before, both in the development of questions. Usually those groups want some sort of access to information after the fact. And they can be a very powerful ally in increasing participation and assisting with information, encouragement, and so forth. So we're happy to work collaboratively with multiple groups in order to tailor the instrument to capture the things that we really want to capture. On our side, that's all part of what we do. And we've seen great success when there is collaboration. We've also seen great success when there's not collaboration, though I would lean towards collaboration if you were asking me. Does that make sense?
Yes. Does anyone else have any questions?
And does that answer your question?
Yes, yes.
I did through you.
Chair.
Sean, I was curious if you could talk a little more about what you meant when you said you have no neutral answers. Does that mean on the range of 6, you're now dividing it in 2 instead of in thirds?
Excellent question. So many surveys that have gone out over the years have specifically provided an answer that says either neither agree nor disagree or NA, not applicable. We prefer to design the instrument in a way that the questions that we're asking are ones that can be answered, either as a yes, mostly yes, no, mostly no, or as a feeling question, or multiple choice. We have many, many designed and or built surveys and conversations. This is just a glimpse of those. I think we have 80 or so loaded here as an example, but we have hundreds that we have developed. So we really we're all about providing accurate, usable information, which is really how the system was designed. And for example, if 33% of our people select no answer or NA, that means that 33% of the people that we were trying to get feedback from just gave us no feedback. And all of that time we spent trying to find out information is now missing a giant part of our group, if that makes sense. What survey designers and survey researchers have communicated, especially over the last 20 years in looking at survey development and technologies, is that by removing the neutral answer, we get better results, and we also provide the organization with more positive outcomes, meaning that we can do things with the information as opposed to sitting around not really sure what we should do in those neutral based survey answers. A number of organizations have kind of followed our lead in this area.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman. Question.
Yes.
Yes. Good afternoon, John. This is Scott Jellison, CEO. Just a point of clarification. All of our employees, as Commissioner Slummy had mentioned, a lot of our employees are working in the field and they don't have a MDC issued cell phone or a MDC issued iPad. However, all of our training is done online. So our staff are given opportunity with equipment, IT equipment, to actually do that training online, whether it's a rainy day, snow day. So all of the safety training, workplace violence, HR related, affirmative action type training is all done online. So we do have the process in place to provide opportunity for all staff to actually sit in front of a computer to do a training, and we can, that's just a point of clarification.
Excellent, thank you. the beauty of the technology, and I think this may be self-evident, but it is worth highlighting, is that when we wrap up a survey or a conversation, and let's say that we open up a survey or a conversation, we build the instrument together. We do a lot of the research, provide examples of questions that will meaningfully capture the information we wanted to capture. And our team, Eli is part of that team, will send that over for approval in working with multiple groups. But the beauty is that once it closes, it could be open for a month or whatever period of time that it's open, right? When it closes, the results come in next day. And I really want to emphasize this. The way that we've designed the technology is that we don't have to wait weeks, months, a quarter to get the results into the system or the platform we're looking at here on the screen. If the survey or conversation were completed on July 1st, which is yesterday, today, July 2nd, we would have complete access to all of that data in the system. There's no manual data entry. Any and all reports that need to be generated, we can get provided within 24 hours. If it's not something that's right in here, for example, say we come in here and we kick off a presentation and we look at the way the presentation is laid out, but we want to change it a bit, we can provide that within 24 hours, but all of it's automatically generated. These conversations, for example, if I were filtered to a particular team or a leader, I could come in and walk through my overall results from my department. I could walk through with my team what we're doing really well and what we want to maintain. I could walk through with my team what we'd want to improve and or the areas where we feel like there's room for improvement. And then I can walk through next steps with my team. And all of this that we see here on the screen, again, I really want to emphasize this because it is unique, comes in within 24 hours. Does that make sense?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Atl here.
Yes. Mr. Patel,
can
you're next, Mr. Avedisian. Mr. Patel?
Question to Sean is, how much input do you get from administration in developing your questionnaire and input? Because each part of the organization have some vested interest. So we have to make sure that even union and union leadership, all these people's, whatever questions you develop, you better check with administration and also make sure that administration's review is very honest and clear and precise. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I want to make sure that I capture the question. Is the question how much input do we receive? Did I get that right?
Yeah, to start with your survey.
Right. We are very flexible in the instrument, and all I mean by that is that we have a very high willingness on our part to edit, modify, change the questions in a way that captures the information that an organization really wants to capture. With that said, in other words, I really want to emphasize that we're flexible. With that said, we have a mountain of research as to the topics that often matter most to individuals by industry, as well as individuals based on the type of jobs that they're performing on a daily basis. And we have the flexibility to tailor the instrument to be longer or shorter, but also to provide us with the meaningful information that we want to be provided with. And that really comes down to the design of our surveys and conversations. It comes down to the design of the questions. And at its core is recognizing that if we're really wanting to be successful as an organization, there are three things that we need to do. We need to get the right people within an organization. We've got to get people to be productive as best we can. And we want to retain the good people that we have. And when we look at those three critically important parts of any organization's success, We know that happiness is a component part. In other words, how a person feels is a very important component part. Equally important is the relationship that an individual has with their direct supervisor and or manager. So all of our surveys and conversations are designed to very accurately measure the relationship between the employee and their direct supervisor and leader, as well as you saw, the patent pending technology that verifies how people feel to really find out how they're doing. And with those two pieces of information, we can meaningfully keep things the way they are if they're going well, as well as identify areas that are room for improvement.
Mr. Avedisian?
I think it was Adel.
Oh, I'm sorry. Andy?
Yeah, it began with A.
Yeah,
That was
sorry.
close.
I'm sorry about that. Sorry for the
That's it.
confusion.
No, quite all right. Could the speakers please talk to the importance of anonymity? In other words, how truthful the responses are based on the fact that no one knows who's giving those responses and how that goes, how you come about that.
Yeah, anonymity is extremely important to many employees, not all. There are some individuals who we've worked with and we know that we work with that would happily get up on stage and probably tell you exactly how they feel. Just as there are those that probably are maybe a little more cautious or nervous about the open sharing of information that may result in some sort of reaction or consequence. Everything that's done within our surveys and our conversations is anonymous and confidential. And those two words don't mean the same thing, so I want to go over both. The confidentiality just simply means that this information is not shared with anybody other than those that you choose to allow to see it. So only authorized individuals will have access into the platform. Only authorized individuals will have access to this confidential information, and we can limit who sees what. So if we had, I'm just going to use accounting as an example. If we had the head of accounting that we wanted to provide access to this platform, we could limit it where the head of accounting could only see the results from the accounting group, for example. That's the confidentiality. Now, the anonymous nature is that the technology that we use to develop this platform was developed by engineers who previously developed a technology for Walmart, Sam's Club, and Walmart.com, where they needed to be able to gather personal information from customers in order to provide exemption from tax to teachers and so forth. This same engineering team that developed this platform and that was successful in separating out the identities from the social security numbers or taxpayer ID numbers, that exact same technology is what's used to separate out the individual employee from the results that come into the system. And the reason I emphasize that is that our software engineers, even if ordered by a court of law, it would be impossible for them to reconnect those individual responses to the employees that left them. Does that make sense to everybody? It's completely impossible once the survey is closed.
Excellent, thank you. Thanks for
I have a follow-up.
Yes.
Sean, as a follow-up to that, in your example, if you are doing the head of accounting and the head of accounting has 20 employees, do you share those demographics you talked about earlier, like years of service, with that manager?
Again, that is completely up to you all as a leadership team. If you want to allow individuals to be able to break down the demographics, that's possible. If you don't want that, then it's not. So I'm just going to pop into the results. Let me actually hop in here and grab accounting. Okay, so I'm now accounting, and I'm in here. I can provide this information to accounting in this filter and compare button up here that we see up here in this top left, this blue one.
Yeah.
This can be disabled, meaning that we don't have to allow accounting to have access to these different breakouts. It is probably also worth noting that these individual demographics are not compounded. And what I mean by that is that I can't pick enrolled in benefits, yes, 6 to 12 months, yes, staff person. In other words, I can't narrow down the results to more or less figure out who it is. The system doesn't allow that. I can select individual demographics to look at, but I can't compound it down to a point where it isolates the group. I think it's usually set at 3 or 5 individuals. So as long as the group is bigger than whatever that threshold is and it's flexible and we can choose it together, let's say it's 5 people, as long as we're comfortable with grabbing multiple, not fewer than 5 people, then we can allow that. But if we don't want to allow it, we don't have to. Sometimes the flexibility of our system is a little overwhelming because we can really almost do anything. but I wanted to emphasize that we don't have to allow access to those things.
I guess my concern would be whether or not that's an instrument for attribution, essentially, that you can look at that.
Mhm.
If you're looking at a particular unit or department,
Right.
and you get that kind of information, I think it's
You can
fairly
reverse
easy.
back
Yeah,
to.
yeah,
an
exactly. Can
individual.
identify the
Right.
bodies.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
My concern too.
So I think that that's something that we need to focus on because, look, I think the important thing here is this is a chance to give our employees and staff a chance to speak. And I think you want to make sure that they have an opportunity to speak. All right? I mean, I think that's important. Now, what they say, that's another matter. And, I'm not about to get into that, and I don't think any of us want to get into it. What we really want is that we want to solicit their responses in a manner that gives us the best picture of where we are, a snapshot at this particular point in time, and some direction that we need to go, if at all, to either improve things, to leave things as they are, or what have you. So I think that that's important. I'm sorry, you can go on. Does anyone have any more questions at this point? Yes.
But before we move on, I want to just acknowledge what was just said, because what was just covered is brilliant and really important, and that's that the purpose behind all this, that because each of you has a genuine care for your people, and your purpose is really to gather information, but also accurate information, and this platform, and it's not. I don't think we're being in any way arrogant as we say this, but just factually, it is the most accurate way to measure how our people feel because of that verification technology that is not available in a paper survey. It's not available in any other platform anywhere. And it's that verification technology where we know finally and for the first time that we gave our employees an opportunity, independent of the questions that we asked. So we're going to we'll gather input, we'll tailor the survey and our conversation in a way that captures all the information people want. But at the tail end, separate and apart from all those questions that all the different groups wanted in there, that individual employee is going to have an opportunity to independently and separately say, hey, here's how I feel overall. And that right there is such a valuable piece of guiding information to get a sense of how our people are doing. And as we get then past that into the results, this system, we could provide access to it to only one person. If you wanted only one person access to it, nobody has to have access to the system other than the individuals that you specifically pick to have access. So there's never going to be a risk of somebody getting in here unless you have decided to get them in here, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Hi, Commissioner Drake. If we gave you a complete description of our company and what we do, and what all the staff does with quantities of people, are you capable of developing a scope of work for us in a proposal based on what you know,
Yes.
everything about us? Okay.
I didn't mean to answer too quickly.
No. That's,
we've
you
done that
answered the
before.
question I wanted. So, so based on you know everything about us, you can develop a scope of work specifically for us in a proposal.
Correct.
Any more questions at this point? You guys can go on. continue on, please? I mean,
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
The area that we've not hopped into here are action plans. And given our recent conversation about wanting to make sure that we only provide access to the system to those that we want in the system, I'll cover this more at a high level. So let's just pretend for a moment that we wrapped up a surveyor conversation. And again, this is made up information. And Emily is the executive who we've decided we want to have access to the system. Emily is in charge of all locations and all departments. So I just quickly clicking or selecting these options right here. I then could pick who's got access to see this plan. I could say Joe is going to be able to look at the plan, but Joe won't be able to edit anything. He'll just be able to take a look, if that makes sense. And again, I don't have to do this, just it's an option. I then create the plan, and what it instantly just did is it grabbed all of the results that we were looking at previously and all those screens with all the sort of the fancy information, and it just lists out the topics here. And at a glance, we can see how people feel across these topics. And that's kind of a guide, meaning that as we look across these topics, if people are happy about their job or career, it may be that we don't really necessarily want to take any action there other than to recognize that that's a really good outcome with our team when we meet with them and continue doing what we're doing. But communication, satisfied maybe isn't as high as we want it to be. So when I click on communication, I can expand this. And here we can get a quick glimpse of how we did across these questions, ease of understanding with leaders, understood by the people around you, leadership. And for, again, these are just made up questions that we have as kind of an example. And then as I look at these, I might look at this and say, you know, leadership, I don't like that this is so low. Only 63% say that they feel like leadership keeps people informed. 37, that's too high. I want to change that. So I can come in here and create an action. I can create my own action and type in here what action I plan to take. I can select a status of that, whether I've started it. I can pick a due date. I can assign it to Joe if I want. I can figure out what I feel like the budget's going to be to take this action, as well as any time. And if I'm maybe stuck, not sure what to do, down here it says view action ideas. Eli and the delivery team have developed, I think at this point, thousands of different action ideas that are available to either maintain, make slight improvements, or really change across these different topics. So any and all of these are available. Let's say, I'm just going to say one-on-one meetings for this. I'm just using this as an example. So we're going to schedule one-on-one meetings with the team members to gather more information about this topic, really better understand. It could be one of the things that we want to do. And I want to schedule that out for the 12th of July. I then create that action. And now when I come here, you'll notice that these unselected topics that are down here, I can hide these. And right now my action plan has one action in it. And that action is to have those one-on-one meetings, which is down here. You'll see that listed right here. So action plans can be created within the platform. They can be downloaded, printed out. Our team, Eli and the team, can work with your executives or leaders to create these and really make good use of the accurate information that we're bringing into the system. Any additional questions on action plans? There's a lot there to unpack, and I covered it very quickly. I guess the high level would be the conversations, the technology, the input that we received in creating the instrument allows us as a starting point to have all of the things we want to measure. The way that we distribute that information and the way that we gather it means that we're going to have the most accurate information available anywhere. That information then comes into the system. We've got access to look at that, understand it. But at the tail end of that journey, of course, is, well, what do we do now? And that's really where that action planning system is really useful. Not not just because it brings everything together in an easy way, but also because it helps us really monitor and keep track of our progress towards those goals. If we decide that we want to take 6 actions, maybe between now and the end of the year, we can actively monitor how we're doing towards achieving those 6 actions, if that makes sense.
One question, how deeply do we get into demographic information? In other words, if you take an employee, male, female, Hispanic, white, African American, Asian American, is that picked up in your survey or not? And in terms of the information that is then, I'm going to say manipulated, but in other words, when you do your statistical analysis and come up with conclusions or observations, can you talk about that?
Sure. The demographics or the work, we call them workplace groups, which is just a way to group people within a workplace, right? So like if we have a staff, leadership, or length of employment, these are decided on by our customers, by our clients. We have a massive list of ideas, but really before we put any information in here, it is approved by our customer or our client. So we don't dictate or tell our clients what demographic information they want to capture. We capture the data they want to capture. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So there's nothing fixed in the system. So if we were to kick off a system, and let's just say that you wanted nothing, I think as a default, we usually separate staff and leadership, like at a high level, if someone has a leadership title or not. Beyond that, everything else down here is completely customizable. So the age ranges are customizable, the gender groups, all of this is customizable. Eli, are there any United States restrictions on what demographics can be captured high level?
No, but there are some considerations about when you want to decide whether you want to capture demographics. And of course, think about identifying information. But no, there's really not a U.S. restriction on that.
I only ask that because I know in Canada and other countries there are.
True.
Yeah, there's certain demographics that cannot be tracked in surveys or in our system. But in the
That's
U.S.,
correct, in Canada.
There's a lot of flexibility. I mean, it really just depends on what look as a group you'd like to have at the information, whether you'd like to be able to simply see based on people that are enrolled in benefits, how they feel about, well, let's just say rewards versus not. And in this case, there's not made up information, but in this case, there's not a lot of difference in terms of how people feel about benefits or rewards, whether they're enrolled or not. But if there's useful breakouts that would allow the organization to make meaningful change, we can capture that. And if it's not useful, it does need to be captured. We don't have an agenda on our side. We're very neutral, and we provide access to this platform to pretty much every walk of life.
Yeah, and Sean, just to quickly add on, that's where the stakeholder discussions really came in. You talked about that earlier. You may have different groups, such as your bargaining groups or whomever you choose to be at the table at the outset. That's going to be part of the discussion of determining your workplace groups.
Mr. Patel?
Organizations have these surveys to understand what is good about organization, what staff wants, and we want to make modification and changes. That means we have to have at certain frequency this type of surveys done. What tools we have been getting along with this consultation so that we can continue doing that on our own.
Yes. So access to the platform allows us to send out in an unlimited number of surveys at whenever we want. I mean, I wouldn't recommend sending a survey out every single day, that personally, but the point being that for the duration of the subscription to the platform, an unlimited number of surveys can go out at whatever pace that we'd like them to go out. We have a lot of research and information and advice on that, but it really is up to the organization as to how frequently they want to send out those surveys, whether it's a larger survey or conversation, or whether it's what's referred to as a pulse, or smaller, quick touch base with a group. Sometimes we'll have a larger survey kick off, and we'll identify an area that we'd like to learn more about, and we might then, within a month or so, send out a shorter survey that focuses in on that area, as an example. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
I mean, I know, for example, I know that UConn, when they started, they did them, I think, like every 4 or 5 years. And they surveyed the entire university. So if we decide that's something we want to do, then we can discuss that. But I think right now we're just talking about a more immediate snapshot, just to give us a kind of inventory. We've made a lot of changes, a lot's been going on. And I think we should really give our people a chance to voice their thoughts or concerns or what have you. And listen, it may come back that everybody's fat and happy, we don't know.
Sure.
But I think that they deserve an opportunity, essentially, to speak, and to speak in a situation where they won't have any concerns, period.
For sure.
That they should. For
sure.
That they would, but it's an issue.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you guys can continue on unless someone else has any questions more immediately? Or are we finished or what?
Well, we're all yours, but I don't want to take up any more of your time than you have allocated. I know that organizations that do what you're looking at doing and that use the information are able to make meaningful change. If you and I had been longtime friends and we'd known each other for years, and you were to say, "Hey, Sean, tell me about that company where you got all those awards and this and this and that," and I'd say, "Yeah, I could tell you the story," but really, what it came down to is that on an annual basis, we found out how our people were doing, and that's not to suggest that doing it less frequently is bad. But I know that if I want to retain my people and really have a sense of where things are at, for me personally, getting with my teams once a year gives me enough time to gather the information, look at the results, figure out what I want to do, and it gives me ample time to make some changes. But every organization is different. Some organizations, that's just not realistic, and they need 2 years to do that, or maybe 3. But part of the success of meaningfully improving things within any organization is making the time to stop and listen, which is what we're talking about doing here, but not stopping that. Those conversations we have with our people, if we had all the time in the world, we'd sit down with every person every day and find out how they're doing. But we don't have all the time in all the world to do that. So, how do we leverage technology to kind of be something like that? And that's obviously what we're talking about doing here.
Does anyone have any other questions? Mr. Curry?
I have several questions, but after the presentation. But through you, Mr. Chair, I would ask that, because we have Kelly and Jamie and Rita here, and the positions they hold are important and relate to this, I would ask if they would have any questions of the presenter.
If someone's speaking, I'm not able to hear it.
I'm Rita Kelly. I'm the EEO officer here at MDC. And I guess what I was unclear about is you talked about conversations, and I didn't really know when you said conversations what that was. Is it a back and forth, or is it just asking rating questions? I didn't really understand that. So if you could clarify that, I would much appreciate it.
Yeah. It's a fair question. So, and I'm going to go through this as quickly as possible. When we started down the path of developing the technology, we started by looking at surveys that existed out in the marketplace, and what we found was this screen you can see here, which is the employee attitude survey templates with the dots, and many of us, myself included, used software systems like Gallup or Qualtrics or Glint or Culture Amp or others in the space. And they all look like this, which is not to pick on them, but they're all just the dots that you see here on the screen, if you can see those up at the top right. And as we looked at the results that would come in and we looked at the participation rates being really low, what really stood out was that employees felt like they were being tested, like they were back in school, back in those old standardized tests that you take with the little number 2 pencils that you fill in. So we started looking at, well, how do we create a technology that feels more like a conversation, that feels more like I have someone there talking to me? And then we did a lot of research and not surprisingly found out that most conversations that you have with someone at work or at home or a friend, it starts with an introduction as to what are we going to talk about. So what we see on the screen here is an example of what someone might see on their phone or on their computer, where we have a topic and it's explained, hey, love to talk about job, work, and career. And here's a little explanation of what that means. Then we would probably talk about some simple yes/no questions, how somebody feels about their job overall, and specific topics. And then there's a feeling question. And now we're done with that topic of conversation. And the system does have little acknowledgments like you would get in a conversation, but what we see here on the screen is an example of what an employee would experience. They would come to a screen that looks like this, and I can zoom in. I would obviously take up the whole screen. Wouldn't be like this little PDF thing, but it would look like this. They click on the blue button or they swipe on their phone, and then they would come to this screen and they'd click the yes, no's, yes, no's, yes, no's, and they click the next screen and they pick the face, add any comments, and go on to the next topic. Does that make sense as to how this is very physically different than the traditional survey dot these things?
I understand it. I understand what you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay, my other question too is when you typically work with organizations and people fill out surveys, what is the typical timeline they have to fill them out? Is it like an hour, 2 hours? Is it 3 hours?
Meaning that if they started it and left and came back.
Right. How much of a time commitment typically is it for employees?
It completely depends on the instrument and the number of questions. The one that we see on the screen here on average takes about 15 minutes, but we have people that take a lot longer because they want to leave longer comments. We also have instruments that take under 4 minutes, meaning that we shrink down the number of questions and topics so that it's much faster. We've got one question surveys that go out that take less than a minute. So it really is just based on the length of the instrument that we want to send out, or the survey or conversation that we want to send out.
Thank you. That's been very helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, and great questions.
Sean, this is Al Taylor. One question. After all of this is completed and essentially you then do the quantitative analysis, what's your process basically for doing that, but more particularly explaining it so that essentially the layman can absorb what the results of the instrument is in terms of the survey of the population here?
Excellent question. So an individual goes through a survey that looks and feels a lot more like a conversation using our conversation technology. The results come into this platform I'm going to click on results and reports right here. And I'm just going to click this right here, which is the view detailed results. This is the high level, meaning that when we look at every employee that's participated, this is the first thing we look at. Overall, based on this survey or conversation, our employees feel happy. And in this example, we've got 1,000 people that were surveyed, and on average, they feel happy. The beauty of the simplicity of this, well, there's two really nice things about this result. One, this is the verified happiness feeling. So on this left-hand side here, we see job, work, and career communication, meaning along the left-hand side. Those are all the detailed questions that people answered, right? But at the tail end, that verification piece where employees verified how they feel overall, this is that verified feeling, which means that every person that gets these results knows that this was the answer that was presented, and the person had an opportunity to change it and verify it, or what have you. And it's a really accurate picture of how our people feel. And the other nice thing about it is there's no ambiguity. We know our people have independently said they feel happy, or if it was satisfied, it's satisfied, or whatever the value is, right? And we're not looking at scores or numbers. We don't need a team of data scientists to analyze it. If our people feel happy or very happy, that's an outstanding result. If our people feel satisfied, that's an okay or good result. If they don't feel satisfied, meaning they're unsatisfied or below, we could probably agree that there's room for improvement at a high level. Then we get a detailed breakdown of employee count and percentage, which is what we see here, which is, we know in this made up example, 80% of our employees have independently said they feel happy or very happy overall. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're happy about everything that we measure. For example, we get into communication and they're not as happy. Only 35% of them are happy. Overall, they're doing well. There's zero ambiguity here. 80%, that is an incredible score. Obviously, these are made up results. But communication, not as good. Meaning, good. Empowerment, 61, it's okay. Growth, not as good. Rewards. So we at a glance can instantly see how many people feel happy or very happy about these particular topics, or how they feel about these topics. And it really is a really nice, easy to understand guide as to where we want to focus our attention. Does that make sense? If we're working with one of our top performers or a group that's really important to the organization, and we knew that group was really happy and doing well, and obviously as smart leaders, we acknowledge and recognize that, we wouldn't really want to mess with things a whole lot. Keep going. If we get with that group and we find out that they're really not satisfied or they're really unhappy and they are equally important to the organization, we'd probably pause and say, okay, there's some room for improvement. Let's dig in and figure out what we want to do here. So the value of what we're looking at here on the screen is that this is the diagnostic step, meaning that we're really clearly understanding how people feel so that we can then pick and choose where we want to focus our attention. And because the information is so accurate, we know that the actions we take are going to be meaningful to the individuals that participated. Does that make sense?
Yes. Jamie?
Hi, Sean and team. This is Jamie Harlow from HR. I have one question, really more specific to the demographics. Obviously, it's important that we keep this as confidential and anonymous as possible. And I think I just want to make sure I'm understanding what the process would be in terms of what information would the MDC provide you in terms of demographics versus what are employees voluntarily providing. And the reason I'm asking the question is we also don't want the data manipulated. So if someone says I'm an engineer, but really they're in accounting, we want it to be as reliable as possible.
A best practice or the best way to do this is to gather the information directly from your organization and to put it into the system so that the individual employee is not entering their own information. And there's two reasons why that's important. You've already highlighted one, which of course is that we don't want individuals to make up information, right? or to put information that's not accurate, because that just means that the information that we get is not accurate. That's one important reason why we prefer to gather the information, load it into the system, and when we send out that link to the individual, again, it's connected until they wrap up the survey, and then it disconnects, so we don't know who they are. The other reason that it's really important is that employees don't feel like it's confidential if they have to enter their information. And it's very difficult to get them to be convinced that it is confidential and anonymous when they're having to enter in their title, how long they've been there, all this other information. So even though technologically both versions are confidential and both versions are anonymous, it's very difficult for an employee to believe that. So we do strongly recommend that we would gather the information, load it into the system, and this way an employee doesn't have to put that information in as they go to start the conversation survey.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
Are there any other questions?
This is Kelly Shane. I had just a couple. Sean, when we had first discussed the presentation today, we had talked about two things that I just wanted you to highlight, if you would. One was the in-person kickoff and how, because we had talked briefly about how important engagement of the employees would be, and you had talked about if you were conducting a survey, the in-person kickoff and how that would be handled. Could you just briefly touch on that, please?
For sure. We do this a lot, whether it's 10 people or whether it's 10,000 people. Eli has done many of these in person, or I have, others have, where we have one or more individuals from Amazing Workplace come to your location, where your people are, and we just do a live kickoff. I mean, we could obviously do that through Zoom, but in person is, we have found, always the best. We also will do a very short presentation, explain simply what we're doing, why we're doing it, and it's a great opportunity for us to also really validate and recognize everyone working at the organization as well as everyone that's behind this initiative. It's a bit of a feel-good moment. We also then usually provide a little bit of a Q&A that depends on whether or not you want that crowd asking questions or not, but we are willing to do that as well.
Thank you. And the second item was benchmarking. We didn't get to touch on that. And through the subscription, and you said we can do, multiple surveys and throughout the year or however long the survey is. Another benefit, and I'm just asking if the software has the capability to benchmark. In other words, if you do a survey 1 year and do a second survey or a follow-up survey within a year later, does the software have the ability to benchmark against the original survey to show if we have had action plans and have made some improvements from the management perspective to see if those improvements have actually, in those specific areas, have actually created a happier workforce?
The short answer is yes. On the screen on the right side here, we'll see this -21 and -15. This right now is a comparison with the group to the workplace, but when we're looking at benchmark results, we would see an additional column here that would show our last survey's results, or if we wanted to look at it over time, we've got a graph that plots out how we're doing over time based on different topics and different areas that we've been measuring and looking at. And that is directly connected to any actions that we've taken, so that we can really see easily on the screen what we've done in the past and how that's impacted our most recent results as compared with our prior results. So short answer, yes. Lot more information and data is in the system to provide those benchmark results. Yes.
Thank you. That's all I had. Thank you.
Once again, I would suggest for those of you that have not done so, that you take a look, even though it's old, the Yukon 2017 climate survey. Because basically what they do is that they do compare the results against an earlier survey in terms of measuring areas where they have either made improvements, areas where there was no basis for making any changes, or for areas essentially where they still had a job to do. So once again, if you haven't read it, I would suggest that you take a look at it because I think it gives you a good overall view in terms of what the climate survey looks like. Now, we may shape it or play with it to fit our own needs, but essentially it's not anything to be afraid of. So, once again, are there any other questions or concerns? I'd like to thank you folks for really a very good, concise, and clear presentation. Thank you very much for your time. And unless there is anything else, I will entertain the appropriate motion. I'm sorry, Judy, opportunity for general public comments.
Chairman, I do have some questions after we zone
Sure.
off
For them or for
for us.
oh,
Judy Allen, West Hartford. And my comments are in the form of a question, I guess. One of them is, how much do commissioners think they will be involved in this process? In other words, will commissioners be involved in designing any kind of survey? Will they be involved in seeing the results of the survey? And then overall, and I guess it's impossible to make it unbiased totally, but is there a way that any particular bias about your beliefs of what's going on can be addressed in both designing the survey and interpreting the results of the survey? Thank you.
Excellent question. So I'm going to work. I'll answer the first question first, which is the involvement of the commissioners in the design of the survey and also the results. The design of the survey, we've got surveys that we've designed, and they've been designed in a way that doesn't have any bias other than the audience that we're speaking to. What I mean by that is that if I design a survey question that's designed for someone that's working in retail, I have a bias in that I'm asking questions that are connected to that retail environment, if that makes sense. But the topics that we've designed in our surveys really steer clear of a lot of areas where there is a lot of bias, if that makes sense. And I'll just give you an illustration of this. Asking an individual whether their leader is easy to talk to, understand, whether the people they work with are easy to understand, leadership does a good job, people keep you informed, do you feel like your leader listens to, understands feedback? These are very neutral questions by their design, and the topic of communication is something that everyone is familiar with that speaks, right? Obviously, we could get into other areas, but at a high level. So the bias in the standard design of our surveys and or our conversations is really been removed. Now, how much bias can creep in based on other groups creating questions? It can come in, and we do all we can to discourage that from entering into the instruments. But at the end of the day, it will be the individuals that we work with that approve the questions that are the ones that say, yes, we're going to ask these questions. So, and it's not to say our hands are tied so much as this whole product and this whole platform is really meant for our customers to use, and we can encourage that use if that answers that question. Commissioner involvement, unless a commissioner wants to be involved in questions, they don't have to be at all. And in terms of results, the results are automatically put in the system based on the direct feedback of employees. And I really should probably highlight this. We don't do scoring, and I really want to emphasize this. The reason so many other platforms don't provide accurate results is they score. And what I mean by that is that they take the results and they come up with a number. Our platform presents the results purely. which means that there's no bias in the results themselves. So when we come to these questions and responses, we're simply seeing the percentage of people that said yes or no. There's no scoring here. This is pure 97% of the people said yes. When asked, do you enjoy the work you do? 3% said no. Now, what the organization does with this information, that's different. But the purity of the data is designed to provide a very clear, unbiased picture, and the results are automatically generated that way. So we're not making any decisions in the results before they arrive here, and when they're presented, they're very clear. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so the other really valuable part of this is that I could decide that 62% of people being happy is a good thing. That's my personal bias. What's unbiased is that 645 people said they're happy or very happy. That is an unbiased piece of data. What's unbiased is that 9% of people said that they're not even satisfied. Those are pure numbers without any data scientist manipulation, bias involvement. It's pure results. And that gives an organization the most accurate starting point to then make decisions. Of course, now we're getting into like people's personal opinions, and there will always be some bias anytime there's people involved. But in terms of the purity of the results, these are just pure numbers, unchanged by any person on our team.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Curry. And Sean, I thank you for that answer. And the reason I think we're talking to a third party in terms of conducting this survey, this study, is one of not unlike an audit where a company doesn't audit itself, whether it be financial or an employee audit. And I look at this as just an employee audit. And most certainly, some commissioners feel it to be true because of the possible perception, real or otherwise, that such an audit or a study conducted through administration and by administration and developed by administration, the perception could be other than what we would hope. And I think that would hold true if commissioners were involved in the development of such a study. And most certainly it would be true at the other end of the spectrum where if the belief is what it is in terms of administration conducting and developing such an audit, the same should hold true that the bargaining unit members would not be involved in the actual development of the audit itself. And I'm not looking for a response. I just wanted to state that.
I'm shaking my head. Yes, we frequently work with organizations that don't want the surveys edited or changed because they want to use the researched questions that we've developed. That I don't want to bore you all and or cure insomnia, but there are roughly 6,000 survey questions that have been created since the 1920s. And we know this because we have an Excel file with every one of the questions that has ever been published in any source of information that we've ever been able to find. And those questions are loosely grouped into a handful of topics. And those questions, as you might imagine, haven't materially changed over time. Now, that list doesn't capture custom questions. That doesn't capture every organization that's created their own questions or developed their own way of measuring things, but it does capture what survey companies have asked employees for over 100 years. Our research and development team pored over every one of those questions going back to the 1920s. We organized them into topics that were created by others, and then we took a fresh look at what are the things that matter most to people today, based on research studies done by Harvard, MIT, Yale, and others. And we came up with the list you see here as an example. The 10 we see here is it's not an exhaustive list. There are other topics we get into, but it's a pretty comprehensive list. And then we developed a relatively short survey conversation system that allows us to capture how people feel about these topics. But this isn't written in stone, and we've got a massive amount of research that we can leverage to capture topics that might be more meaningful to any organization. So there's no shortage of questions on our side available that are designed and unbiased, and it really is just simply kind of like almost like an Amazon shopping cart where you get to work with our team and pick and choose what topics you want, and we bring a list of questions, and if there's anything that we feel isn't useful or applies to our organization, we can remove it. And if you're asking, well, do you all have a way to measure, fill in the blank, right? It could be physical safety. Yes, we do. And we can bring that body of questions available for review and approval as well. So hopefully that it's a back and forth process, but we definitely encourage organizations that we work with to use the questions that we've built, but we're completely willing to change them if wanted, and we've done that. Actually, we've done that a lot with universities. Come to think of it. So,
Follow-up?
Yeah.
Can you provide us with the categories of questions? Not the questions
yes.
themselves, but just the categories.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Any more
And
questions?
actually, an on the screen example of some of those categories is here. I mean, these are really high level, but everything from new hire onboarding categories. So, yeah, this would be an example here. All the way through to internship surveys, purpose, recruiting, safety, working remote, physical safety surveys, training and documentation. So this is just a visual example of some of the topics that we've got in our library of topics, which is probably way more than anybody wants to get into this morning or this afternoon. I guess it's early afternoon, East Coast time.
I'm sorry, I hate to keep beating on this like a record. But once again, I would suggest you look at the Yukon Climate Survey because it covers and it gives you a concrete example that you can look at in terms of how this thing is laid out and the kinds of things that were dealt with and the responses that were obtained. Not saying that you use this verbatim, but at least it gives you a starting line where you can see that a credible institution has engaged in this activity and you can get it done. And I think it's important that you look at the list of people that they indicate who are involved, both from the union side, both from the administration, both from the staff, both from the faculty. So I think it answers a lot of questions and it provides some food for thought in terms of how we're going to structure this. Once again, are there any questions or concerns?
Just one on the follow-up to the categories. And Sean, when you when you provide us with the categories of questions, could you also mark, and I'm assuming that you've done some research on MDC, its staffing levels and different classifications. With those categories you send to us, could you mark the ones that would be your recommendations to include in the survey?
We could, yes. The short answer is absolutely. We always prefer to make, I'm not trying to dodge the question, but we definitely always prefer to make those recommendations after we've had a introductory call to walk through the types of things that the organization is really wanting to focus on or measure. So, but yes, I'm happy to highlight ones that it might even be faster to isolate the ones that are of no value. So
and I'm comfortable with, I'm comfortable with your process, and if that's the case, then I'm okay with just getting the categories for now then.
Anyone else? One thing which I think is particularly important here if we are going to proceed down this road, and I think at some point, we need to brief the entire board so that they,
Excuse me, are we complete with Sean?
yes, we're
We
complete
say
with,
goodbye
yes.
and-
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, you are very welcome. I also just really wanted to recognize and acknowledge it. UConn does a very nice job of putting together their survey, and here on the screen is actually an example of the climate variables, attitude variables that they measure. These are all things that we get into as well, but the recommendation to take a look at this is a good one because it will familiarize everyone with the types of topics that are often covered in these, and obviously you can see the breakouts as to how it's measured there as well. But anyway, yeah, it is a good survey. Not at all different than many of the other ones that are done, but it's really good.
Thank you very much.
Which year UConn
Yeah, you bet.
survey was done?
Thank you.
Well, the last one I have is 2017. I don't know if they did one later. I don't think so because of COVID. But 2017.
Yes, yeah, you're absolutely right. They did a climate survey in 17 with the results.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
You're so very welcome. Thank you for your time today. It was really a pleasure spending time with all of you. And I know from us to all of you, we admire and respect what you're doing for your people. And they may not be here, they may not know it, but on behalf of all of them, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Can we drop them or? Kelly?
Tim, thank you. We'll have, yeah, okay.
Any thoughts or concerns at this point?
A couple questions and then I'll state my opinion. Scott, what would be the process for notifying the bargaining unit presidents of an upcoming survey, climate study?
Well, as you know, we voted on this at the board level, and I believe some of the union leadership was at that meeting. But Jamie would send out a letter to all the leadership of each union, let them know that would be occurring. We'd have to, however we exercise this survey, we would utilize the same way in which we exercise our training. So we'd have to incorporate that into our training program, and we'd give an opportunity for employees to take the time to do this during work. And we typically do a lot of training, rainy days, snow days, or just early in the morning, later in the afternoon. So we have no problem exercising the survey. We just take a little bit of work with whoever we utilize to integrate their platform into our IT system, which I'm sure would be fine.
The second question is, would we give our employees time while on the job to complete the survey?
Absolutely. All of our training, every employee is required to go through significant amount of training, OSHA training, update training, as I mentioned, affirmative action, HR-related issues, workplace violence issues, all those things, and everyone gets that training during their work period.
Now, my question was, would we allow them to complete the survey on MDC time?
Yes, we would.
Thank you.
Yeah, the one question I brought up, which I don't know if we're going to talk about it here, but the biggest issue to me is we have one RFI, no proposals, we have nothing. I mean, these are quite capable guys, there's no question. Do we go out and ask them for their own scope of work and a proposal, and we go out to other people, because right now we have nothing. And again, they're quite capable, but you gotta have 3 proposals or something. This isn't gonna cut it. So again, I asked them, we put something together, say who we are, all the staff we have, different people, and go out to these same companies and say, please provide a scope of work which you'd like us to do and a proposal, because right now, we really don't have anything. So
You do an
that's,
RFP.
what?
You do an RFP.
Well, think about the last conversation we had. About developing a scope of work. We don't have that. And do you go to, so my answer is, I guess I'm gonna question, what do we do next? The question we were gonna have this meeting about asking them, could they provide a scope of work? That's where we were at last meeting. If I was them, I wouldn't send it to us. I mean, everybody, that's their own business. So I think we gotta do next is, let's look at providing, again, a background of who we are, based on their conversation, what our staffs are, what they do, and go out to these same companies and ask them, based on they develop their own scope of work and a proposal. And they all may be different, but at least we educate ourselves. We could pick somebody from there, but right now, go ahead. That's kind of where I was.
Yes, sir. The whole purpose of us wanting to listen to this company was just for all us to
Educate us,
learn as
right.
to
Yeah,
how
no,
this
I
is
just
done,
was
right?
great, yeah.
And so I learned a lot. I hope everyone did. And that information we learned today would easily help us be able to create an RFP that would be more rational and reasonable to match the market, right? We wouldn't want to be asking, based on this presentation, we wouldn't want to be asking somebody to give a paper survey, right? Because that's not the technology. My only question is, Kelly, did we not get a price in this RFI?
Price was marked confidential, so we should
Okay.
speak generally.
Okay. So my only question is, we do have this company did provide a price. You could, if it's under 25,000, you could, we could sign a PO with this company to do this work, or you can write an RFP and solicit multiple proposals. I mean, that's up to the committee. I mean, I think.
Not just, they didn't really provide a price, they just
Yes.
provided.
No,
I thought it was like a little piece they provided, not the whole.
Kelly, can
So
you explain?
when Jamie and I had a conversation with them, they had watched our video on our how to do business with the MDC, and we had talked to them about our RFP threshold going out to bid is over $25,000. And they informed us at that time when we were sharing with them about this presentation that their entire package in doing this survey, providing the software subscription for a company of our size, including kicking off and conducting the survey themselves, would be under that threshold. So I'm just letting you know that.
Mr. Patel.
Have we established any contact with UConn in terms to find out what their findings are, how they view this investment, and what is their opinion? And based on that survey, what changes did they make, which they can identify the benefits? I used to work for UConn. 10 years, I retired in 2017. That's why I asked the question, when was the surveys done? So it will be worthwhile for someone to go in, meet with the right people, for her, our HR staff, and talk about it. And some senior staff can accompany with them.
Mr. Patel, let me be clear here. It is not the intent to have this committee frozen out of the process. I think that it is important for us that we be involved in this process because we want to hear from the employees and staff, regardless of how it falls out or what they tell us. They may tell us everything is okay. That's fine. but at least we've given them an opportunity. And if they want to speak their piece, they can. If not, then shame on them. But at least basically they've had the opportunity, given all the changes and things that we've gone through here. So I think that we need to make sure, at least at the board level, at the policy level, we've had a chance to look at this, to discuss this, and make some determination, basically, as to how we're going to be involved in this process.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
honorably, I disagree with some part of it. That there is administration, we have HR, and we have professional employees. We can give them guidelines, but we should stay away from hands-on touching anything. And
Well, I guess basically that's a discussion that I would want to have with the other commissioners here, and more particularly people who are not on this committee who may have views. We can disagree.
Yeah.
And that's all right. But essentially, I think that it is important that we thrash this out so that people have a very clear understanding. I don't want people thinking that somehow this thing was not done in a manner. And I don't want to cast any aspersions on anyone, but I think that we've got to make sure that people think that it was even-handed, it was put together in such a fashion that people could respond, speak their piece, and I don't know what they're going to say, but at least they get a chance to speak their piece. And they've had to do so in a fashion that basically accords with the standards, in terms of how these things are conducted. Any more comments? Mr. Curry?
Just one, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Regarding the Yukon survey, you read it and you read it again, and it gives you this nice warm and fuzzy feeling. And while it may be absolutely accurate and the findings be true, it was really a survey conducted from within and not from a third party.
Yeah.
And so I would question, as an audit of someone auditing themselves, that's not what we're looking for. It's a good document to read. It'll give you some ideas. You can go online and pull off other surveys, but just keep that in mind.
so Yukon survey was not done by this consulting company.
No, it's
It was
done
done
in-house.
by the Yukon staff themselves.
Correct.
But I think, to say to their credit, they had the full range, basically, of people, both academically and professionally, who could do this kind of work. I think that's one of the things that sort of distinguishes UConn from us, in effect.
That's the public information, right?
Yes.
Just my last question, not to keep harping on this, but what are we doing next? I'm not sure. We're not I thought these guys are great, but we're not going forward with these guys, right? Don't we have to go out and do an RFI, an RFP with something?
I thought that we're going to be basically shaping an RFP. All right?
About what now?
Well, that's one of the things that we're going to have a discussion about.
Oh, I thought that was a question we were asking them today, but okay, that's fine.
All right.
I just not sure what we're doing here.
And I agree, that's what we're going to do, but I think enough information has been provided by Amazing, whatever the
Workplace.
company is, that we should let administration put together the specs for that and then come back to this committee so we can review, revise, approve, whatever the case may be. And if it wasn't for having only one RFI response and we had more than one, I would be inclined to hire this company.
Well, I tell you the truth, I wouldn't
The
either.
price is great.
No, well,
We don't have to ask for more money.
well, again, the scope what they talked about under 25 is not necessarily what they talked about here. They were talking about people coming in and doing
Yes,
different,
they-
which is not that. That's,
Yes.
right?
Yes, it is.
They're gonna send people and talk to every employee for 25 grand.
No,
No.
they never said they were gonna
No,
talk to
no.
every.
I thought they were gonna
They're
part
going
of
to,
their
they're
thing.
gonna, they would come in for a kickoff meeting or multiple meetings on a day or 2-day time span, maybe at different locations, just to kick off the survey, work with us on a communication plan and kick off the survey. They've done that for other clients. But yes, the whole package, the subscription and them conducting the survey, obviously working with us on the demographic information, the emails, setting up our employees in their system in order to conduct the survey, but they would conduct the survey and help us do that. That was all inclusive and within our small purchase threshold under $25,000. So theoretically, I could ask them for a formal quote and you could issue them a purchase order in support of that quote and move forward with a subscription and conduct that
If
survey.
that's the case, I'm fine with that, 'cause we don't have to waste, quicker, but that's fine.
It is in with the procurement, it is in accordance with our procurement rules, is what I'm saying. Don't have to do that, but that is
I'm okay with that myself.
possible.
Mr. Chairman? If this committee were to decide to go that route, we need to then bring back and get the same presentation in front of the entire district board?
I would suggest that. I mean, I think that this is important enough. I think that we ought to have all hands on board. I think it's critical. Because I think essentially we want to make sure that all hands are on deck on this. Because, I think it's important, and as I say, let the chips fall where they may, okay? But I think it's important that people be given an opportunity to participate, have their say, and, we take into consideration and weigh their remarks.
This survey does that. Any survey will do that.
Well, but listen, any survey does that, but there is a process leading up to a survey. I mean, a survey basically is put together based upon the institution and the people in the institution. It doesn't just come pulled out of thin air. That's all I'm saying here. But I just think that it's important that we make sure that everybody understands what it is we're about, what we're trying to do.
We can give one question. Tell anything bad about our organization, and they will tell you, and listen to it.
Well, I mean, listen, I'm not saying that we're looking for that. What we're trying to say here basically is, look, tell us what you're feeling. Tell us what you're thinking, okay? Now, if you don't speak up, shame on you. Because there are other things that we need to do and that we have to do, right?
There is not shortage, in my opinion, of people speaking up in governmental organization.
Well,
one way or another, it filters through anyway. And in a smaller organization, they approach different people, and including commissioners, etc., and you filter it out. As long as we don't make it as our business to deal directly with it, everything will be okay.
Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Attorney Myrtle, if this committee were to decide to go in that route and recommend hiring Amazing Workplace and referring it to the district board, would we need to do an addendum to the agenda?
You don't have a quorum.
Oh, we have a quorum.
I think we do have a quorum, if I can just confirm the commissioners that are online or.
Okay, I thought we didn't have one.
So your question is whether a motion to request a proposal germane to the agenda item as written?
Well, it doesn't
Today's
say
meeting?
for potential action, so would we need to
can't
do
amend
an
it. You can't
addendum
amend-
to the
Can't
agenda.
amend the agenda.
Can amend the agenda. It's a special
Oh,
meeting.
it's a special meeting, I'm
Can
sorry.
amend the
So
agenda.
it doesn't need to say action. You can still take action on a discussion item so long as it's germane to it.
Yeah.
And I guess I would ask Chris.
Well, it's gotta be related to the topic. I mean,
Exactly.
oftentimes you'll put a topic in and sometimes you'll put potential action, you'll put consideration of, or you'll just put the topic down. But it doesn't have to say action. I mean, I thought we didn't have a quorum, so that's where I was going. But if we have a quorum, great. And then you can take action as related to the budget, the agenda item.
If I may, the question though to Chris and to John, we don't need authority to hire anybody under 25,000. So, question. I understand that this is part of the RFI process. I understand this is part of a possible RFQ process, RFP process, but administration doesn't need authority from the board to spend 25,000. So we could question.
No, the problem isn't about spending the money.
Yeah.
The problem is how are you gonna do the procurement? And this committee has been engaged in this process. And
Yeah.
to say now that because you can procure under 25,000, I can just go do it, or you can, or the administration can just go do it, that, in effect, you can do that now without any action by the committee.
We can blame you.
But
And that's the beauty.
yeah, exactly. But I think the committee, and with all due respect to the PPI committee and the full board, they've been engaged in this process. They have allocated funds during budget time towards a climate study. They've gone through a process now of issuing an RFI towards a climate study. I think it's fair, it's right to have the committee decide whether they want administration to procure this particular vendor for pursuant to their authority to spend under 25,000, or whether they want to do something else. So action should be from the PPI committee, at the very least.
This is John Myrtle. Commissioners Adel, Salemi, Stuber, and Avedisian, are you still present remotely?
I don't think, is Andy on the committee?
I didn't hear, if anyone was trying to speak up, you might still be muted. Commissioner Salemi, Avedisian, Adel, Stuber, could identify yourself?
Yes, I'm present.
Thank you, Dave.
Is Andy on the committee?
No.
I think he's just listening in, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. Okay, we don't have a quorum. Only Stuber was present.
Well, I think we should schedule at some point another meeting.
Can we do a phone-in thing, or that doesn't work? Like, everybody send an email? I don't know.
I think we should have it here. I think that we should be a call with regard to this committee. But more particularly, I think that we should also invite or ask other commissioners to come.
Well, if I might, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
other commissioners are invited to all the meetings.
Exactly.
We can give out a
Yeah.
special meeting, that's fine.
Yeah.
But that's consistent with what I was just talking about, is this committee, if you're gonna act formally, and you should, on how you wanna procure, first of all, you've already decided you're gonna do a climate study, so how you wanna procure a vendor to provide the expertise for a climate study, then you should formalize that in a vote. You can't do it now without a quorum, but I think we have a meeting coming up, John.
July 29th.
July 29th.
Monday, the 29th.
Can we put that on the agenda? Okay. And would it be imprudent or improper to ask staff to, we don't have to have an RFP, do we, if we're going to do it this way? Okay.
But you can decide that on the 29th, that your preferred way, your recommended way, your directed way to procure a third-party outside consultant to perform this task is to go through this company, and assuming it's going to be under 20, I assume it's going to be under 25,000, then we can spend that money.
Okay, all right. Mr. Curry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know Chris is using the threshold and Kelly 25,000, but without approval, but our threshold is really 50,000 that was budgeted. So this board can approve employing a vendor to conduct the survey under the 50,000.
Well,
$50,000 I thought was, and we better, we'll check on that. I thought it was to to do the research for a procurement study. I didn't think it was, that was all you were limited to.
No, if you go over the 25,000, we have to bid it. So if you go over 25,000, you're gonna have to do an RFP, so at least you receive bids, publicly bid, item. So that's the concern about the 50,000.
Now, I would definitely recommend on your 29th meeting that it be on the agenda for consideration and an action to approve Amazing Workplace as the vendor of choice.
And if I may, between now and the 29th, what I would like to do is ask Amazing Workplace for a formal quote with a scope and a price for what they presented here, so that I will have that for you if you would like to review it.
Thanks, that was where I was going, to
Great.
ask you to
Yes, that's
frame
what
it
I,
up for
that's
us?
what I can
Okay.
do, so that
Okay,
you'll have
thank
that
you.
information. Yep.
Super.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else, any other issues?
May I, Mr. Chairman? Not a member of the committee, Commissioner Hoffman. Has it been discounted that we would not attempt, for whatever reasons, to address this exercise in-house? Has that been eliminated categorically?
We talked about that last meeting.
We talked about that the last time around. I think there was a consensus that we would be better served from an auditing standpoint to have someone on the outside
Good enough.
do it, okay?
Answered. Thank you.
If there are no other concerns, questions, or what have you, I will entertain the appropriate motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Done.